Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jamie. We are at the end of November, finally, and I have read so much this month. It's ridiculous. I haven't read this much in 1 month in a very long time. I don't think since I've worked for the library. It's insane. It's completely insane. I was very happy with the picks I had this month. Today, we are going to be going through and reviewing all the books that I have read for the month of November. I actually had quite a bit of selection this month. I had a young adult dystopian, I had a historical fiction, I had a classic, I had an erotica, I had a paranormal, and I had a thriller. I applied variety this month. I was very happy with everything except for one. One got DNF'd. So we are going to start off with that one and why I DNF'd it. So I had read the physical copy before. I have not read the audio version. I like reading the audios because I can listen to them while I work. It makes the week seem like I did something, if that makes sense. But we hit the Vampire Diaries. This is the first 2 books combined into one, and I DNF'd it after the 3rd chapter. I didn't even get that far because I realized that this was kind of meant for middle school minds, if that makes sense. The banter was ridiculous. It was not the way I think girls talk to each other. I did not like the banter in this at all. The banter was horrible. Absolutely horrible. The main reason why I DNF'd this was because there was a scene where Stefan is getting checked in and he basically wired the lady to just let him go. So we went forward with that. Elena's reaction threw me completely for a loop in a bad way. So she, in the beginning, seemed like one of those girls, so she doesn't want the attention, and, you know, she just wants everybody to stay away from her except for her friend group, which does seem that way in the actual series. But when she's thinking about, like, oh my god, he just completely ignored me, he completely ignored you, and then she was talking about everyone comes around me at least asking me, you know, who I am, and I'm so pretty, and all this other stuff, and he just ignores me. I couldn't deal with that. That to me is self-centeredness to a whole nother level that I just don't want to read. So I like the TV series better. I think it did better justice with the character looks. I do like the fact that they took out the other person in Elena's group, Meredith. I think that having just Caroline and Bonnie worked absolutely perfectly. I just like the TV series better. And to be honest, I may finish it now because I know I'm never going to read the books. So, yeah. So that's how I felt about this one. I gave this one a 2-star because I didn't finish it. And the beginning was good, the setting was good, all the way up until all the banter was happening. So I completely no. So this one, definitely not. I did have the other one after this also on my shelf. That one is also going to be donated as well. I am going to do something different with my donations this year. So we shall see where this goes. But that was my first one. The only one technically that I read physically this month was Aladdin and the Arabian Nights. I absolutely love this cover. It's gorgeous. And it was definitely different than I thought it was going to be. So we've heard of, you know, Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. We've heard of the Aladdin story. We've heard about, you know, Sinbad. We've heard about all those stories. These ones have all of them in it. It's a tale of a whole bunch of different stories. So throughout the pages, we get different stories. So we got Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. We have Aladdin. Aladdin, let me tell you, the actual story is completely different from the movie. It's like 2 separate things. because they are so different. I did, however, like these because it was very original to the times. There was a lot of blood, there was a lot of gore, there was a lot of decapitation, there was a lot of dismemberment. It's very gory, and unfortunately, that's just some things that I like. Don't come for me, please. This has to be one of my better classics that I have read. And not only that, but I also kind of enjoyed learning about the different kinds of stories that, you know, the Aladdin times brought. So overall, it did take me a while to read. However, this took a lot of brain power. I did enjoy it. You do have to take your time with it, because if you don't take your time with it, you could skip over, you know, something important. But it's written a combination of, how do I say it? Jane Austen and Shakespeare kind of put together. Just a little, I don't know. It's hard to describe. You guys would have to pick it up and actually read it. But it is very interesting. I think that you guys should read it if you haven't already. It's a good read. It really is. So, gave this one a 4-star just because the only reason why I docked it a star was because how much brain power I had to use. I got a headache every time I read this thing, so I'm glad I don't have to read it again. But I will keep it just because I love the cover so much. Next that we have on the list is a book I've had for probably about 2 years now, I think. No, it's only been a year. I take that back. No? Yeah, it's been a year. Okay. So, the next one I read is Taking a Risk by Anna Blakely. She has been one of my favorites that I've not only met, I love her so much. I'm gonna keep saying that every time I pick up a book, probably. So, she is one of my favorites as far as these kind of romances. Absolutely love her work. Her work is beautiful. I'm gonna read this synopsis for you guys. Thankfully, it doesn't give too much away, so very easy. So, former Delta Force operator Jake McQueen can handle anything except losing the only woman he's ever loved. With news of Olivia's death, his world shatters in an instant, driven by an intense need for revenge. Jake and the other members of RISC, or RISC, travel deep into the jungle to find those responsible, and maybe, if he's lucky, his very own miracle. So, she's in Madagascar at the time, which I already would have said that's not a good idea, and she didn't tell him where she was going, and he just sees that she died on the middle of the TV, because they can't identify the bodies really. They're just assuming that they're all dead. So, he freaks out. His buddies are with him, and they go to Madagascar to at least get the bastards that killed her. I love it. We open up with action. We end with a cliffhanger, because I didn't realize that the part 2 literally meant, like, continuing the story. Sometimes they don't do that. Sometimes you wrap it up. But I guess she just wants to make sure that you read the second one to find out what's going on. So, okay, I love this, and let me tell you, the interruptions in this story were hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. I laughed just thinking about it, because these poor souls in this story. No. But it is definitely the definition of someone who will do anything for you to keep you safe. And I'm living for it. It's my first military base. Not really like that kind of military, but like special ops. Definitely one of my favorites. I really enjoyed it. I loved the action. I gave it a 4 to 5 star. I think I gave it like a 4.5. Oh my god. But I loved it. I do have the second one on my shelf, and I will get to it when I get to it. I'm not going to make any promises. Not this year. Absolutely loved it. For those of you who have not read Anna Blakely yet, definitely pick her up, because it's the second book I've read by her. Absolutely love it. Love it. The next one I have, we go into the historical fiction aspect. So this is Sisters Under the Rising Sun by Heather Morris. First Heather Morris book I've ever read. I thought that this one would be about as good as The Tattooist of Auschwitz. I haven't read that one yet, but I have heard people rave about it. It is a lot thinner than this one. I've already talked about this in my blog video, and I'm going to elaborate for you, those who have not watched it yet. This book was a good story. 100%. An awesome story. I think, though, that because there were so many girls involved in this, and I'll read the synopsis for you guys in a second. There were so many girls involved with this that we didn't really connect to any of the characters. I remember 2 of the names out of the whole thing. And there's like over 50 girls. You lose track of who's who. You lose track of who looks like who. It's confusing. It really is. And when they do have the point of views, they're like this long. It's not even that long, really. It's like this long. And it doesn't even do all the girls. So, I think that if they were going to stick with just that one point of view, they needed to stick with that. If you wanted to do multiple points of view, I think that could have made this stronger. Having one girl name for this date, and then moving forward with that, I think that would have helped this book reach the bestseller point 100%. So, I can tell probably why this was sitting in Ollie's, because not a lot of people got the book, because it wasn't popular. But, having read it, it actually was very informative. I didn't know that the Japanese were doing the same thing that the Germans were doing with the Jews. And I'll read that to you guys in a second so you guys can see what this one's about. So, in the midst of World War II, an English musician, Nora Chambers, places her 8-year-old daughter, Sally, on a ship leaving to Singapore, despite desperate to keep her safe from the Japanese army as they move down through the Pacific. Nora remains to care for her husband and elderly parents, knowing that she may never see her child again. Sister Nesta James, a Welsh-Australian nurse, has enlisted to tend Allied troops, but as Singapore falls to the Japanese, she joins the terrified cargo of people, including the heartbroken Nora, crammed aboard the Veneerbrook merchant ship. Only 2 days later, they are bombarded from the air off the coast of Indonesia, and in a matter of hours, the Veneerbrook lies broken on the seabed. After surviving brutal 24 hours in the sea, Nesta and Nora reached the beaches of remote island only to be captured by the Japanese and held in one of their notorious POW camps. The camps are places of starvation and brutality, where disease runs rampant. Sisters in arms, Nora and Nesta fight side by side every day, hoping whoever they can, and discovering in themselves and each other extraordinary reserves of courage, resourcefulness, and determination. So, it is a very sad story, don't get me wrong. And usually with, like, I'll give examples. Librarian Spy, I read a couple of years ago. Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I read a couple of years before that. Those both made me cry. This one did not. I think that this is a very, very depressing time. And if she would have added a little more of that personal aspect, getting more attached to the girls, I think that that would have been cry-worthy. There was a scene in here that did almost get me there, but at the same time, once again, I wasn't really connected to her. I didn't understand the attachment. So, I think it could have been a whole lot better. I gave it a... Anything I finished already gets a 3. This one, to me, got a 3.5. I did enjoy the story. I learned something from it. So, I'm not going to give it any less than that. But I think it could have been so much better. So much better. I'm looking forward to reading Tattooist of Auschwitz, because I already have it on my shelf. I'm hoping that it'll be a little bit better, but we'll see. Next one that I have here was one of my last ones, and then I'm going to get into posting the ones that I don't have anymore. This book, I have been wanting to read since it came out. Since I even heard it was coming out. Was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Okay, getting into this one, I was scared, which is part of the reason why I hadn't read it yet, but I was also really, really excited. Getting into this, This is the prequel to the Hunger Games. This is the first 10 years. This is the 10th annual Hunger Games. This is Cornelius's aspect of the Hunger Games. I'll tell you what, being with Katniss in the Hunger Games was a whole different ball field. Being with Cornelius, being a mentor in the Hunger Games, was completely different. It's different looking in on the Hunger Games and realizing the things that happen versus being in it and knowing the danger and the everything that comes with that. It was definitely a different point of view that I enjoyed. Overall, while listening to this, because I did listen to it while I was working, I had a couple of aha moments like, ooh, I know who that is, or ooh, I know where that's from. Like all this. And I had one real big aha moment like all the way back here. There was so much involved with the story. I feel like I really enjoyed it. For those of you who have not read The Hunger Games, first of all, it's very brutal, okay? So, after the war, they decide, someone comes up with the idea to make sure that we stay in power. We are going to take one boy and one girl from each of the 13 districts, and we are going to put them in what we call a Hunger Games, where they both compete, and whoever is the last one standing gets to go home. And they're the victor for the whole thing. So, this being the prequel to that shows actually how far, like, Katniss and those Hunger Games have come since here. It's like night and day. It's completely different from how they treated the tributes to what they wore to just the atmosphere. And we did watch the movie. We did watch the movie after I read this book, and we both agreed it was so good. The movie did the book justice. It was 100%. It was just as good as the 3 that they did for Katniss and Peeta. We absolutely loved it. So, for those of you who have not read The Hunger Games, definitely read it. For those of you who have not read this book in The Hunger Games, definitely read it and then go watch the movie. So, I loved it. I think that it could use another book because it has that potential. There's like, we're in the 10th. Katniss is in the 74th. So, I think there's so much unanswered questions still that I have. It explains some things. It explains certain things that are in the Hunger Games. It explains some of the ideas, but I feel like there's more to the story that she hasn't told us yet. So I think that it could use another one. There is a potential for another one. So, Suzanne, if you ever see this, I think we could use another one. Right after Cornelius' story, I think we can use a continuation of his somewhere along the line. So the last 2 that I saved for this video are 2 that I physically do not have anymore. One of them I did physically have, and I showed you guys and when I picked it out, but it was a library book, so I had to return it. It was Nightwatching by Tracy. She has become a new favorite author to me. She is a thriller writer, and I do intend on reading the rest of her stuff. If she has anything else, I haven't looked into her yet, and I need to do that. So, this book features, I don't remember the names at the top of my head. I read so many names this month, it's baffled. But we have a mother, and her 2 children are alone inside of their house. The mother hears something going on in the house because it's an older house. You understand kind of like the creaks and the moans and the feel of the house. You know what's creaking, and then you know what's not supposed to creak, that someone's making it that way. And she hears that, and there's somebody in the house. So they're having a break-in, and we go through the whole beginning, starting off at that point. It's like, oh, we're already in this? There's no build-up? Okay. I was not prepared. I will tell you that. I was not prepared. This is a home invasion story with her and her 2 kids and everything that they went through. And there's so many things in the story. So we have a before and then aspect. We have just the mothers. We don't have anybody else's, including the police. We just have hers. We have a before and then with her and her husband, and, you know, a couple years before, stories about their grandfather to make them understand the character now, and back and forth to understand the story. Nothing that she goes back to is unnecessary. Like, each one of her bash flags. Oh, let's try that again. So each one of her backflashes has a reason. It has a purpose. So it's not unnecessary. And that is one thing that I really enjoyed about that they were necessary. The whole story, I got through halfway through the book, and the whole thing was like, oh, we're getting the police involved? Isn't this supposed to be over? Aren't we supposed to be looking for the culprit here? And there's like half of the book left. I'm like, what's gonna happen in the rest of the book? And I read it, and I was literally like this, listening to it when I was working. I'm like, oh my god. I was almost near the end of work, and I just had to pause it. I paused it because I needed to know the ending without having to not focus on work. That wasn't gonna happen. So I finished work, and I listened to the rest of it, and I'm glad I did, because I was in bafflement, and I wouldn't have been able to think if I was working at the time. So, this book had so many plot twists. It was, oh my god, it was so crazy. But I absolutely loved it. I gave her a 5-star. She is an amazing storyteller. I will look into the rest of her books just because I loved her that much, and I don't have a lot of thriller writers that I enjoy. Lucy Foley's on the border, but she writes a lot like Sherry LaPena. That's one of the reasons why I love her so much, because I can relate to it, and I enjoy that kind of writing. But I fell in love. This did come out this year, so for those of you who haven't heard of it, that's probably why. I think it came out in either September, August-ish, maybe a little earlier. But I enjoyed it. I 100% like read it in 2 days. I couldn't put it down. I was listening to it outside of work. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I got it from the library. That was one of my favorites. That was a 5-star for the month. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. The next one that I have for you guys is also a thriller, just on another big theater. So we have The Pilot's Daughter by Audrey J. Cole. Once again, we just get thrown into it, but on a smaller aspect of it. So many different points of view of this whole thing, but you know who each of them are because they're all spread out. They all have different names. There's only 2 ladies I confused because they're both of their names started with A, and they were very similar in that manner. But I did know everybody else. There was no confusion. There's the government aspect of it. There's a corporate aspect of it. We have 2 just regular ladies on board. We have one of the stewardesses. We have a detective who got on the flight. This is a hijacking story. It was a very interesting story as far as learning how an actual airplane would handle this kind of a scenario. I can't really talk much about the synopsis because it would give too much of it away. So I'm trying to avoid doing that so that you guys can just enjoy it. But I absolutely loved it. I loved the thriller aspect. And at the same time, I was already nervous because once I figured out it was an airplane hijacking scenario, these guys were on their way to Hawaii. And you know what? We crossed to get to Hawaii. So I'm going to leave it at that. One of my worst fears ever is flying over open water. Thankfully, I've never had to do that yet, so I haven't been scared. But being on a cruise line and seeing just nothing freaked me out. And I was freaked out for a good few days before I finally calmed down. It's just one of those things that just freaked me out, which added to the creepiness of this story. I absolutely loved it. It was my other 5-star that I had this month. Go figure. It's another thriller. What can I say? I love my thrillers. So, but Tracy Sierra and Audrey are two of my, I love them. They were awesome. And I want to read more of their books and get that same feeling. Audrey has a lot of different scenario books, but most of them are thrillers. So I intend on reading her hard books. I gotta look into Tracy Sierra to see if she has any more, or if this was her debut. If it's her debut, stick with it because it was good. So that is what I was supposed to read for November. I have a bonus book. So Court of Thorns and Roses, I did read in addition to the other books because I had so much time on my hands. I had time to read 2 more books. I could have read another one, but I've been so tired and I wasn't into it. I wasn't having a good day yesterday or the day before. I didn't want anything to do with that. So I took a break from reading. After reading this book, then I'm going to hop into doing my December stuff. And I will have that video up for you guys after Thanksgiving. So sometime between that Saturday and Monday. So look for that. I had so many mixed feelings about this book. So one of the things that bugged me, one of the things that threw me off in the beginning was the beginning. I did not like all the unnecessary banter that was going on. I think it could have been shortened. I think it could have been sweet. I think it could have been completely different. I think this could have been so different from how she wrote it in the beginning. Just in the beginning. And for those of you who watched my vlog video, you know that it started off very skeptical. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this. And I got to page 50, I'm like, I need to give it some time. I decided I would give it till page 100 because of how popular it is. I have to trust the process. And I'm glad I did, because around 80, 90, we started picking up and moving to where things started happening. So for those of you who have not read Court of Thorns and Roses yet, this is a story about Freya. She's living with her father and her 2 sisters off in the woods. They're as poor as can be. So she's fighting for everyone in her family to feed them, get them money. And there's a lot of pressure on her shoulders, and I did feel for that, because unfortunately I do know how that is. So it is tough. It is really, really tough. So we move forward with the story. She encounters a wolf in the woods that was about to eat her dinner, so she kills it, and thinking it could be a fae, it could not be a fae. The fae word in this story is so weird, because I don't know if the wolf aspect was from the curse that was on everyone, or just they can do it 24/7. That wasn't really clarified. So I was left with that confusion in the beginning. If someone knows the answer to that, they can let me know. I may find out later in the stories, because I do intend on reading the rest of them. That part was confusing. She kills the wolf in the middle of the woods and then tells her that it is the law for her to be either killed or go to the Faelands. So that's what she does. She's like, well, I can't die. The least I can do is escape. So she's living over there with the Fae. And the story takes over from there. The way I've looked at it, and probably the reason why everybody loves it so much, is because a Beauty and the Beast retelling with fae. That's pretty much what it is. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, definitely with a different ending. So if you're expecting the whole thing to be the same, it's not. The ending is definitely different. But it is very similar to how Beauty and the Beast is. Overall, I did enjoy the story. I did. I did not like Farah, or however, I'm pretty sure it's Farah because it pronounced it in the book. But I didn't like her character. I think she was very whiny. She was like a child. She was acting like a child, you know, always wanting to know, well, instead of figuring it out for yourself, you're always whining to other people, what's going on? What's wrong? Explain it to me. Like, they expect to just drop everything instead of you just doing what you're told and then going to them later and being, what the hell was that? So can you please tell me so that I can understand, please? So many problems could have been solved with her just listening. It aggravated me. It's like, just do what they said. You're not from this world. Just do what they said and you won't die. She did that like 3 times. Probably more than that. But it frustrated me. It really frustrated me. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't give it a full 5 or like a 4.5. I docked it and left it at a 4 because of Farah. I think that her character was whiny, in my opinion. Hi, honey. In my opinion, I think her character was very whiny. So that's my opinion. If you guys can tell me that it gets better, let me know, because I hope it gets better. But I know another question people are probably going to ask me about this is, did I have a favorite character out of the whole story? And I did. It's probably not one a lot of people talk about. I know a lot of people like Rysand. I know that he's very popular, and just because, you know, it's the color of his hair and his mannerisms and everything, everybody likes a bad boy. I don't. I like the one who's got your back no matter what, which leads me to my favorite. My favorite was Lucien. Lucien was my favorite because he was the best friend and the protector through the whole story, and I loved it. The character building was fun. He's not an angel. Okay, just hear me out on that. He's not an angel, but he's not like a goody two-shoes either. He's got a little bit of both, and I like my characters with a little bit of both. That means they do what they need to do, but they also don't cross a line. So, he was my favorite out of the whole series. For those of you who are wondering, Lucien is my favorite. I hope I get more of him because he's probably going to be the part that keeps me going in this series. But I do intend on reading the rest. So, that was my November TBR. I had so many good books this month. I had like 2 that I didn't really enjoy, but considering that I read about 8 books, I'm very happy with everything that came out. I'm very happy that I got some thrillers in this one. I had a lot of good picks this month, and I'm very, very happy about that. I am looking forward to doing my remainder of the videos I have for this year. I have already made the extra video, but I do have a different plan for next year already set, and I intend on sticking with it because I know that it's going to be hard, and this is going to be a challenging year. I want this to be a challenging 2025 year for me, to go through my books in a different way. If you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of these videos. Let me know if you guys have any questions for me, either about the ACOTAR series or any of the books that I have given recommendations to this month. And I will see you guys next time. And so, love your reads and drink your teas. I am gonna go to continue reading some more. Bye!